So, my name is Nadine Jessen, and I'm a dramaturg and curator here at Kampnagel. And together with my colleagues Alina Buchberger and Uta Lamberts, we created this 3-day focus on medicine, gender, art, and their intersections. And so I'm super glad that we have international guests. It's not something so normal these days. We have guests from UK. Let me start to introduce wonderful Catherine Hoffmann here.
Hello.
Sitting in the middle. Yeah. Warm
Thank you.
applause.
Thank you.
That's good. More.
And
Very good.
wonderful Brian Lobel.
Hello. Woo! Crowd work. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. So
Pleasure.
Maybe you can introduce yourself also a little bit, Catherine. Both of you are performance artists,
Yeah.
not only performance artists, also many other things more. But maybe you start with a little self-introduction, please.
Shall I go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so so I am a performance artist. I mostly do work that is autobiographical. That's mainly my solo work, but I also do a lot of collaborative pieces as well. So I work with other kind of choreographers or performance artists or visual artists. I would say that throughout most of my work, I tend to use a lot of music and sort of DIY song making. So over the years, I've just kind of been making it up as I go along. Just making my own kind of melodies with loop pedals and voice, and that seems to have stuck. So I've been using that in a lot of my work. And I would say generally it's kind of absurd. It's, I sort of go into absurdity. That seems to be my thing, of going into humor, but then also kind of letting it flip into kind of vulnerable territory, such as, like, for example, this show that I've done for this festival, which is all about my journey with having my fallopian tube removed, and I've explored things to do with grief and loss and shame. So I tend to go to all the juicy subjects, and explore those. I'll leave that there.
Brian?
And shall I?
Yeah.
So my name is Brian. Hi. I'm an artist, performer. I teach. I teach BA in theater and social change in London. I'm originally from New York, and I've been making work for 20 years. 20 years ago, I've just turned 40, which I think I wear it well. But it's also, I had cancer when I was 20, which was the starting point of my art making journey. I started making my first performance piece based on notes that I started taking when I had cancer.
So actually your artistic career and your cancer was like more about, it started like with that?
Yeah, they kind of went together. I really wanted to be a director. I thought that was what I was supposed to do. That was like what smart kids who live in the United States and want to do the arts, but their parents won't let them like be actors. They say, oh, you can be a director because that feels like a career. So I really wanted to be a director, and then suddenly I had cancer, and I went from being kind of a cisgendered white man in public who never caused a commotion. Carrie Sandel, who's a really brilliant academic who writes about disability, she talks about disabled people causing a commotion in public space. So if you look different, if you seem different, people are nervous around you, they don't know how to act. And also she talks about co-motion, moving together. What is it, that dance of I'm looking and you're being looked at, etc. And when I went from being cisgendered white man who never caused a commotion in public space to suddenly within 2 months, I lost a third of my body weight. I lost my hair. I looked very different. And suddenly I went from never causing a commotion to always causing a commotion. And that was how I really was like, I should be a solo performer. That should be, if I'm going to be looked at, I may as well control the image, which is really where feminist solo performance came and queer performance and a lot of people's kind of thinking about solo performance. That's how I started. And now I've been thinking about illness for 20 years now. And there's so much pressure for people with an illness to talk about it once and then to put it away because you're over it. You survived, you finished it, now never talk about it again. I felt politically it was important to kind of stay engaged in the topic of illness, even though my body doesn't tell cancer stories anymore. I don't have cancer stories, new cancer stories, but I'm still engaged in it, which is where Sex with Cancer and the other kind of installations that I make around illness come from. That was a really long introduction, but I just wanted to tell that story. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Thanks for sharing it. No,
Sorry.
and this was also for me a very, actually, this was one of my questions. Like, if there was in your artistic work, like a kind of before and after. So. I don't need to ask you this question now because you, but it's very interesting for me to hear that actually this moment of becoming an artist and being ill or get this information that you that your body has a big challenge, that this like comes like more or less together in one point. Kath, I think. In your biography, this was maybe a little bit different. So,
yeah, I mean, it's slightly different, but this before and after thing is quite interesting in terms of creating commotion, like you said, because I think for me, I made a piece about, 2016, which was a piece related to class and shame. And that was a moment for me where everything kind of changed in terms of up until that point, I probably was doing like a lot of passing and a lot of kind of like blending in. And then that when I made that piece, that was the moment where I was like, oh, there's no going back in terms of I now have to keep agitating myself. And that it was a kind of, in fact, it created such a kind of, storm in my family, like everything changed in terms of like, oh, okay, now I have to cause, I feel like I now have to cause a bit of trouble, but in an enjoyable way. And I think it was also a mixture of, for me, it's slightly different to Brian. I didn't really find my voice until my 40s. It wasn't until my 40s that I really was like, okay, I feel like I have the confidence to speak. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was making work up until that point, but I think really that my 40s was the moment of going, okay, I need to be more myself. And I guess I just had a much longer journey than maybe some other people. And in terms of like the piece that I presented last night, that was a kind of a continuation of going, okay, I need to keep exploring things. And it kind of, there is also class within this in terms of looking at having a voice in relation to accessing information and knowledge and how you also interface with the medical system. Mm-hmm. And that I also learned from my own experience. I mean, like, I sound really I sound quite posh, right? But so that's what I'm saying. I'm quite good at passing, but then there's a whole other kind of world that I've come from. And then also just all the women that I was speaking to, where I was talking to groups, again, that were from working class backgrounds, for example. It was really clear to me how the struggle that was going on in relation to accessing information about their own bodies, etc. So even without realizing that, I was putting that in the work. So I feel like I've been on a journey from that piece from 2016. And then the actual experience, the actual physical experience of itself, in a way, that whole piece kind of wrote itself because I was kind of keeping a diary all the way through, and it was just evolving.
Yeah, for those who listen to us now and didn't watch the show yet, this is a big announcement tonight, 10 o'clock. You can watch it again. The show is called CYST-ER ACT.
Yeah.
And so you choose, and I think maybe this is also something that I don't know anything similar in the German art scene. And maybe there's a reason why in this focus we have quite a lot of artists from UK. So there's both of you already mentioned a little bit this kind of like humor. You, Kath, you choose a very, let's say, direct, humoristic attitude also to drop all these issues. Is this maybe also, or how did the process go? So you wrote diary, and did you already have in mind to go to that form to present like CYST-ER ACT, like this kind of musical, or how was this process?
I definitely didn't think of that straight away, but how did I get there? I don't know. I mean, like I said, I started with a diary, and I kind of was thinking, I really want to make some songs. And I suppose, I am just someone who is just naturally always veering towards silliness and play. And so I was really interested in the devils and this idea. How did I get there? Even just the word play. I love playing with words.
Yeah, and it's
so
also,
that's
really funny.
It's just a really big part of what I do. I'm always playing with words. And so, if I'm just riffing with a friend or someone, and it's like, and it just kind of sticks. And then before I know it, I'm going, right, I'm going to write a musical all bass. And then that's it. I'm just on this kind of ridiculous train ride.
If I can add,
yeah.
I think that illness and bodies in some ways lend themselves to a lot of serious conversation, but they also lend themselves to a lot of silliness, in that I think the experience of never interacting with the medical world, with doctors, nurses, etc., and then suddenly to interact with them. Of course, it can be a horrifying process, but it can also be very silly.
Yeah.
Interactions about coldness of gel, interactions about suddenly, now we're all used to wearing masks, but suddenly, suddenly you're in masks, you're in robes, you're tied to IVs. There's something that's both really horrifying about it, but there's also something that's like playful and weird and silly and absurd. It's like a whole new embodied experience that you've never had before. I think when I had cancer a while ago, many years ago, I was treated in the same space as the Amish. I don't know if you know the Pennsylvania Dutch, very religious. They don't use any technology. And they were from right around where the hospital was. And I always thought that there was actually an amazing metaphor to me in these people that never engage with technology doing the same MRI as me, and what that world must be like to never use a cell phone and then suddenly be inside a gigantic tube, and how giant that journey must be for those people. That is just an extreme version of what it is from all of us that use technology regularly, but still the embodied experience of having things on us, tubes coming out of us, catheters, all of this, it lends itself to silliness in many ways, and to laughter.
Mm-hmm. I remember when I first time saw your artistic work. It was many years ago in at a festival in Belgium, and at that time you did. It was called Fun with Cancer Patients, and I remember my first reaction was I was a little bit not like super shocked, but I was a little bit like, wow, I never. For me, cancer is so like serious, and then to have this fun with cancer patients, I was like, is this empathic or not, or is this funny or not? But it worked, so it made me interested and go there. And
the title is always the work. So I don't engage with a lot of. There's a lot of artwork that I don't engage with, but I might know the title of. So if a good title should be one that is actually doing the work whether or not you see the show. So for me, the question of fun with cancer patients or sex with cancer is asking you to put things together in your mind that you're not usually used to. Because I know that, this is an intimate audience that's here and online. I could actually talk to everyone here one-to-one. But in the dream world, when you can't talk to everyone. And so Sex with Cancer, which was our online sex toy shop for people with cancer, was launched. We had coverage in the Daily Mail, in the Metro, huge 6.8 million people engaged with the title of the show. They're never going to engage with that, but they're never going to be able to talk with us or see the commissioned artwork or get to have a really nuanced conversation about sex and sexuality and how our medical systems are underserving us. But I will hope that they go sex with cancer. So if someone's having a problem with their sex life when they have cancer, which we know is 50% of people with cancer have a problem with their sex life, that they are just a little bit more emboldened to ask their doctor, ask their nurse, ask their friend, talk to their partner about it. Because I think without that, they don't even think that they can do it because we're not good at permitting people to engage with those conversations. So the title, if it's a good title, is asking you to do the thinking that the show asks you to do, even before the show happens. And even if you don't buy a ticket or if you don't buy a dildo, it's still okay. But
maybe it's good also when you share a little bit, because Brian, the Sex with Cancer is like not really like a group, or is it like a real group, or is it like an open format where people can join? So because I think people can more easily understand. Kath is like doing a show. Your work is not like show. It's a little bit different. And there are also many other people involved on the journey. So please share a little bit.
I am personally interested in art which starts conversations that didn't exist before. And the form of that could be a show. I have shows, we do a lot of the similar kind of work, which is solo work in front of an audience or group work in front of an audience. But sometimes the format, which is about having a conversation that doesn't exist yet or isn't doing work yet, needs to take a format which is not a stage show. So this project, which I created with June Lin Go, another fantastic artist and producer, and working with Tony, who is our sex toy curator, she's out there in the shop right now, and Rashid, our colleague, we're trying to think about how we can support this larger conversation about sex with cancer. And the goal was we need some art to do it, which is the commissioned video that's going to be up after this, some art, some interactive work, some information from doctors and nurses and sex toy sellers, and some commerce. So we think that the biggest difference between people and their pleasure can be about them knowing what will bring pleasure. And one of the ways that we do that is with an online resource and a sex toy shop. It's very simple, and not everything that we do is saying you have to buy something for it, but we don't want people for there to be 10 pounds or 12 euros between someone and their pleasure. That would be ridiculous. So we just find a space for them to sell that thing. Was that the...
It's a storm.
Earth.
Yeah, it's...
That's the earth.
The wind.
It's a heavy storm.
Oh my God. Hunker down, get a lover, stay indoors tonight. That's what I would say. That would be my opinion, but I'm glad that we're all here together. Did that answer the question? Is that the art is about the conversation, not about the method?
Genau.
And,
This is what I wanted to point out a little bit. Not saying that you don't do show, but you do also
But
do
this one is
performance
not a
shows,
show,
but
yeah.
you also do these kind of projects, which work with this like big headline, but then there's like a whole long research. You reach out also to non-artists and include them in your work, right? So how do you do you meet regularly, or like how do you hold this kind of group together?
For the Sex with Cancer team,
For the Sex with Cancer.
we work, we have a weekly meeting that we do. There's a lot of questions about supports. So the people that are engaging with our website and the stories and the commissions need support. They need consistent support. They need thoughtful support. And we're an art team. We're peers, people with lived experience of cancer and difference, but we're not medical professionals, and we make that very clear. So we're trying to give access points, shoot to a lot of other resources, and so we meet very regularly. We're building a longevity. The goal for Sex with Cancer is that in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, it still exists. It's an art project that grows and grows. So we work together. We're trying to be as gentle with ourselves as we can. We have lost, one of the things that happens when you're making work around illness in the body is that you lose people along the way. Multiple people from our Sex with Cancer community have died, which is part of the reality of doing work on the subject. People know that if they work in mental health, if they work in HIV/AIDS, if they work in disability, we lose people all the time. So for us, the central thing that we do to stay together is to really go slowly, to really go gently, to trust our own energy, to say what we want to do, what we don't want to do, when we want to do it, when we don't want to do it, and try to be as disconnected from that pressure of consistent output as possible. That's a huge pressure in the arts, as there is in capitalism, as in anything, but really trying to say, we can't do this work if we don't honor the people who are not here. And we can't do the work if we are ourselves overwhelmed and sick. So trying to think about that care while also understanding that the people that we're engaging in the conversation need us to be there. They need us to be present. So it's about finding that sweet spot.
I don't want to reproduce stereotypes on that artist, have it easier when it comes to when something happens to you, that as an artist you said it took a long time until you found your real voice in terms of speaking up, but as artists, of course, you have different ways of expressing what is going on. So do you think, because many people also get sick and they have no form to express maybe their feelings, their fears, or this. So, you got sick, but you are also artists, so you have different ways of expressing it. And I think that this is for people who watch it, who don't have this possibility of expression, that this is also helpful for them. So how is the feedback from audience? I can imagine that this is also something deep when people watch your show, right?
Yeah, I mean, for this, I think I've had a lot of interesting enough. I mean, even I've had moments where even I've been in situations with like teching the show in different places where technicians have been like, oh, yeah, no, my girlfriend's going through that right now. I'll have to get them to come to the show, or so I've been quite surprised at that. And like, yeah, people, I think, I mean, it's been a mixture of responses in terms of, like, I've spoken to people who have just gone, oh, you know, even though I had something else, that was my experience. And I guess it's a kind of thing, like, for me, I made it because I just felt like it wasn't stuff that was being talked about. Mm-hmm. No one was talking about all of these things to do with cysts and fibroids and the menopause, and I was just like, wow, that's why I made the show. I was so gobsmacked through my research of just going, wow, I didn't know any of this, and I'm talking to other people who don't know any of this. So I've got to do that's what made me do it. It was like, I've got to do the show. I've got to at least try and get other people to, you know, have a conversation. And I suppose the kind of humorous part of it is a bridge of kind of like, you know, I was always a bit like, oh God, you know, what are blokes going to think watching this? But I think that the humor and the music somehow, it is a bridge. People have wanted to talk afterwards, and people, you know, I've spoken to a lot of people in bars where they've gone, oh, you know, can I tell you about what my experience was? This is what happened to me when I was at the doctor and I was told that I was mad, or, you know, I wasn't listened to. And I think that's the thing that, and that's why I set up a whole thing called Gynae Hubs around the work, so that I set up conversations with other people who could then come and share their experiences. And I think it was kind of to set up a kind of pool of...
Is this, it's called Gyn Hubs?
Gynae Hubs.
Gynae Hubs?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
is this like a regular
well,
format,
I
or
mean,
is it online?
I mean, it was, I set it up so that I was doing... I mean, unfortunately, it all stopped when the pandemic came along. So I wasn't able to do, because it's very the whole point of it was it had to be face to face. It was really about being in a room and being able to share personal experiences. But also what was fantastic about these conversations was that we were able, as strangers, to actually give each other tips and advice. Mm-hmm. So it was, so that, you know, there was real moments where it was like, no, if you go to that person, or if you try this, then, you know, this might help. So that there was a real kind of cross, you know, referencing, so that there was support for each other. And that was really important, to kind of take it into our own hands. And so, yeah, so the show was just one aspect of opening up that conversation. And then there were kind of satellite conversations around it.
But it's also like a little bit like DIY, right? So
yeah.
What is not provided by governmental health
no,
service or whatever, especially this kind of like space for feedback, right?
Yeah.
What both of you were saying, like suddenly you end up, something happens to your body, you are in hospital, all these weird things, and then you can't really exchange all your or what happens to you. So this is why then you set up. This is a little bit also like how you do it, right? So it's a mix of art and activism also.
Yeah, I mean, I toured a solo show about my experience of cancer for 18 years. Last year was the first year I did not perform it, which is crazy.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, listen, it was like having a...
Congrats.
It was like having a good single. You know, people still were interested. I mean, I did other things along the way, but what was interesting is when I created Ball, which was my show about testicular cancer, I felt like I was 20 when I made it. It was a fine show. It's good. I'm still proud of it. But really what happened was that the lights would go down in the audience. I would sit on the stage. I would talk on the stage for an hour. And then the lights would come up and people would be devastated. And it had nothing to do with me. I really don't think I was 20 years old. The show was fine. I wasn't that great a performer. But what happened was they came, the lights went down, they heard the word cancer, 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 cancer for an hour. And they're thinking about their mother, their brother, their partner, you know, whoever it is. They were having their own experience. And what happened for me in that moment was at first, I would be offended if someone got up and left the room. I thought, I'm not doing a good job. Or they would come back and I'd be like, why are people so casual with my performance work? I'm doing great work. And what I realized was that they were all on their own journey. They were on a profound and important journey that all I was doing was facilitating it. If I might present something that might say, yeah, I have a sense of connection with this point, like that wasn't my story, but it was my story. The details of stories of illness are really helpful in that way, and was finding that I was triggering, not necessarily in a bad way, just triggering moments for people. And for me, to have that as a really young experience as a performer was really profound, because I stopped caring about whether people liked every sentence I said, or every costume I brought on stage, or every lighting look. And I saw it more that the theater space became more of a communal, almost religious space, where all I was doing was allowing them to have their own experience. I'd like to think that my writing was good, or that there was things that I was doing that were charming or important or interesting to people, but really it was, especially on the topic of illness, I saw that it was really that the performer was a cipher or a mode of transportation for the audience about their own journeys, which are profound and very different. Some much more serious than mine, some much harder than mine, some much less so than mine, and mine becomes the scary tale for them. So I always was, that dynamic of an audience and performer became really exciting in that moment. And I think that things like Sex with Cancer or Fun with Cancer Patients become the articulation of that difference. Because it goes like, actually, I don't care for you to hear my story. I just want us to be able to have a conversation about sex and cancer. And the shop feels like the most clear way to have that conversation. One day, maybe I'll come on stage again, but not for a little while still.
But this is also what I remember from this, from my visit in this Belgian festival, the Fun with Cancer Patients. I remember not the pieces that were in the shop, but I remember that I didn't know you at all, and within a few minutes we had a very deep talk on death, but at the same time you were also making jokes, and I was a little bit like, I don't know, is this now funny or and then what I remember most is that you really gave me a shock, because you had this like easy way of talking and making jokes, and then you said, and there's this object from this person, and he passed like 3 weeks ago, and blah, blah. And I was so like, wow, this, when you of course deal with cancer, some die, and this is maybe the wish to produce art also a little bit that something like kind of stays as a kind of like a memory culture. How? What are your thoughts on this? Or your practice with this?
It's interesting because I think for a lot of work that you work, when you work with communities, there's a lot of questions about the ethics of engagement and permissioned forms and releases and things like that. And I always moved away from working with a release. You know, I'm taking a picture of you and I'm going to use it forever and I'm going to publish it wherever I want. That always felt unethical to me because people's relationship to their bodies change, and what you wanted photographed at 20 is different than what you want photographed at 25 and at 30. And the picture of your scar with your boyfriend next to it is different when you're 28 and you're together and you're 32 and you're separated. So I always thought that when I'm working with other people, to try to just be really live about the ethics, to say, oh, do you mind if I use this photograph? Can I feature this video, etc. The question comes when someone dies. And what do you do in that way? And I've always tried, because especially a lot of the young people that I've worked with have died. A lot of cancer that people face as young people are very, very serious cancers. They're very hardcore cancers and they kill a lot of young people. Trying to think about who is the person responsible for making those decisions. How can I honor their life in a way to include this or to not include this? How can I have a conversation with their parents before they pass so that they can understand and be together? Because I also think people think, oh, I don't have explicit permission, so I should never do anything like this. That's one way of viewing it. And there's another way of viewing it, which is says, I didn't have explicit permission, but actually this is the thing that is going to be something which honors their life moving forward. Those are careful, ethical questions that we're trying to navigate on individual bases as we go along. So I think that question of death and leaving something more is profound, and there's no simple answer to it. So for me, it's about the ability to keep having that conversation and not be ashamed to just keep having that conversation as many annoying times as it needs to happen. Is that okay?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course, everything is okay. Okay, so we have 5 more minutes, then we go on. Then you gonna show
There's a
film.
German premiere.
Yeah.
Of a new film.
But Kath, before we let you go, maybe there is something you maybe you work already on something new and you want to share with us what, because I remember also when you came here also some years ago, and you were telling me and Uta about your idea to make Sister Act, this musical about your cyst, and Uta and me, we were a little bit also like, okay, yeah, why not? Sounds interesting. So, what are your next?
Oh God. Right, what am I doing next? I mean, I've had a funny old relationship with making performance work. I mean, I haven't. I've got something lined up that I'm gonna. I'm still not quite sure what it is. It might just be a series of songs and texts. I'm supposed to be showing something in the UK at the end of April at the Cambridge Junction. And at this present moment, because it's been so long since I've actually made my own shows, I've just got a funny kind of like, what is it I do? I think I'm just going to start with some song making. It's going to be kind of like a live album. That is all I know.
Yeah.
So I suppose you could say I'm going more into the music side of things, but there will still be a performance element within it, but I'm just not sure what that is. Yeah, I mean, I think over the last couple of years, during this whole period, I've ended up doing a lot of work for other people, kind of supporting neurodiverse artists and producing, and so I'm only now just starting to come back to my own creative process again, and so I'm still working out what that is. But yeah, I think there'll be some kind of I've been learning music programming. That's been a whole new thing. So I've been learning to do Ableton Live programming, which is like a bit of a challenge. So yeah, it'll be something, but I'm not sure. Sorry, that's really vague. I'm sorry, but that's
okay. The journey goes on.
Where I am. Yeah.
It's not April yet. You don't need to be finished already. We just have end of January, so there's still time. Okay, Kath, super. Thank you.
Thank you very much
for being with us and sharing your thoughts and your process with us. At 10 o'clock.
Oh yeah, 10
Who's
o'clock.
in Hamburg? We can
come
see you
out
live.
of the storm and come here at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the last show.
Will still stay. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.